I like how aggressive Pereira's being. But he's orthodox. Ankalaev's not as comfortable in orthodox. Oh, he rocked Ankalaev. He rocked Ankalaev. Oh my god. Ankalaev's showing up. Wait. He's good. Herb Dean, don't stop it. Oh man. Wait, they're gonna stop the fight. I think Ankalaev's gonna get finished.
Pereira wins. Got to be Ulberg next, I guess. That's insane, man. Herb just jumped in. What? Dude, he got aggressive. He landed that right hand. There's no damage on Ankalaev's face. I knew everyone was going to I knew it. Shama. That's crazy. They're never giving him the trilogy. Uncrowned champ, they're never to give him the trilogy. That's crazy. Didn't take any damage at all. Took one right hand. Horrible stoppage.
I couldn't be happier to be wrong. Alex Pereira marched down Magomed Ankalaev, tore up his legs with kicks, violently concussed him with a right overhand, and then viciously TKO'd him with elbows. Now I have to admit, I completely counted Alex Pereira out. I thought he was mentally in the wrong place prior to this fight. You know, hanging out with Nina Drama and letting his coach Plinio visit Japan while he was in fight camp. But Pereira, at 38 years old, pulled it off. He's reclaimed the belt and is now once again the face of the UFC. As Poatan paraded around the cage, the Las Vegas crowd went wild, Yuri was welling up with tears of happiness. You know, even Hunter Campbell, who is the second in command of the UFC, was jumping up and down in joy. However, there was a certain group of MMA fans who couldn't help but be bitter, who couldn't help but cope, seethe, and just absolutely crash out in the most pathetic and humiliating way. And well, today, I just want to engage in a little bit of schadenfreude. So, let's get started with a few of these Twitter accounts. Now, if you have a bad addiction to Twitter like I do, you may have seen this particularly diabolical account called Madzar MMA before. And this account, well, it posts the typical content glazing a certain kind of fighter. And in order to do this, Madzar MMA puts down other fighters, saying absolute zero skills shown from both these clowns in this fight when talking about Pereira versus Roundtree. When, you know, most people who watched that fight saw it as the 2024 fight of the year. And I mean, if you look at this account, 99% of it is just hating on Alex Pereira. So, after Alex laid Magomed Ankalaev out, Madzar decided to publish this very high IQ and very mature tweet, where he said, "Fuck you, Pereira. I will celebrate when you or your sons get shot. Khamzat Chimaev, go grab that light heavyweight belt." And while this tweet did get some backlash, it still managed to get over 200 likes. And this really just shows how these fans feel about the sport. When one of the fighters who they support loses, they can't help but wish death on not just the winning fighter, but on their children as well. Another gem of a tweet that this account put out was this one, where he's hoping that Khamzat Chimaev and Azamat Murzakanov save light heavyweight from Alex Pereira. Which, if you're looking at the sport from an objective perspective, is an absurd thing to say. If you remove the surnames and the religions from these fighters, I think everybody would agree that they'd rather watch Alex fight than Chimaev or Murzakanov. And sure, Khamzat Chimaev is a star on par with Alex Pereira, but he just won the belt at middleweight in a performance that was dominant, but also very boring. And he's already calling out Alex, but Khamzat needs to defend his belt against Imavov at the very least before moving up. And as for Azamat Murzakanov, he shouldn't even be in the UFC. This is not a widely known fact, although I will try my best to make it more widely known. Azamat Murzakanov has tested positive for PEDs not once, but twice. Back in 2017, Azamat Mirzakhanov received a 2-year suspension from USADA due to testing positive for exogenous boldenone, an anabolic androgenic steroid. Then, in 2024, Mirzakhanov tested positive again, this time for LGD 4033, which led to a 180-day suspension. And while this time the anti-doping agency concluded that this was due to a tainted supplement, it shows at the very minimum that Mirzakhanov is careless. And to be frank, considering his previous suspension, I believe there's enough evidence to conclude that he is a drug cheat. But anyways, enough about Azamat. Let's get back to Madzar. And let's talk a little bit about that name, Madzar. Now, I've never heard of someone from Dagestan or Chechnya being named Madzar. And in English, it's typically spelled without the D. So I went to check this website called Forebears to see how popular that name is in Dagestan. And as you can see, names like Habib, Umar, Islam, Magomed, Shamil, and Azamat are all pretty popular in Dagestan. But for some reason, Madzar is simply nowhere to be seen. The same applies to Chechnya. I found Hamzat, I found Ramzan, but I don't see Madzar. So I had a bit of a hunch. On the same website, I went to the list of names for Pakistan, and guess what? Madzar ranks as the 171st most common name in Pakistan, with over 200,000 men having that name. And if you look up the name on Wikipedia, you'll see that, save for the odd Turk and Kurd, every famous person with that name is either a Pakistani or an Indian Muslim. Very curious to say the least, because Pakistan doesn't have a single UFC fighter. And the only Indian UFC fighter, Anshul Jubli, is Hindu. And when it comes to Pakistan and Dagestan, the only two things those countries have in common are their religion and their high rates of consanguineous marriage. Could it be that Madzar MMA is a Pakistani who wants to live vicariously through Caucasians due to his own country's lack of fighting talent? Perhaps. I mean, he also likes to hate on Anshul Jubli, so that might be an extra little bit of evidence there. But anyways, let's move on from that individual and look at some more delicious Twitter code. So, here we've got Mr. Boris Dripmaev, who lists himself as totally unbiased, which is something you can tell from his Twitter banner. Prior to the fight, he was posting, Brother, what have we learned? Never rematch us otherwise... Wait a second, sorry. Wrong accent. What have we learned? Never rematch us otherwise you will be rendered unconscious. You're next, Pereira. And you know, this tweet is pretty funny when you consider how that pic of Paul Hughes is from him getting groin-shotted for the 5th time by Usman Nurmagomedov, who somehow didn't have a point taken despite committing numerous fouls, and won by 50-45 unanimous decision in Dubai. But yeah, let's take a look at what Boris Dripmaev posted after Ankalaev's loss. Enough time has passed, I speak for every MMA fan out there when I say this was one of the worst stoppages in MMA history, and Ankalaev should appeal the stoppage so they can run it back because we know Pereira won't give him a third fight. So yeah, let's just dissect this tweet a little bit. First, I speak for every MMA fan. Yeah, I'm an MMA fan and I think that was a perfectly fine stoppage. I just rewatched the fight and I counted at least 28 unanswered ground strikes before Herb Dean pulled Pereira off Ankalaev, who was shelling up in the fetal position like Anthony Smith. And second, calling Pereira a rapist is just plain wrong. Now, a year ago, there was this TikToker called Meredith Brown who accused Pereira of assaulting her. There was a lot of buzz about this for a bit, but many parts of her story didn't add up. Brown presented no physical evidence whatsoever. In her original story, she claimed not to be a UFC fan, but she was later found to be on camera during a UFC event prior to the reported date of the incident. She was also found to be bragging about the amount of notoriety she gained from the accusation, and how this attention might drive traffic to her OnlyFans. However, since this accusation was entirely baseless, Brown ended up deleting her social media and Pereira hasn't been charged with anything. Calling Pereira her rapist isn't just ridiculous, but also possibly defamatory. There's another account here on MMA Twitter called Wire MMA that levies these baseless accusations at Alex, and well, you can probably tell how much integrity he has at a glance. But then, Boris Dritmaev continues to cope a bit more by posting how a close 48-47 decision that arguably could have been scored for Pereira is a more decisive victory than a first-round TKO. Another coping account, KSI Fandom, says this too. Decision wins will be forever better than flukes. And this account went on to spread some misinformation about Ankalaev having norovirus, a broken foot, and an injured ACL leading up into the rematch. I mean, this guy is citing MMA Joey as a source. And the thing is, that side of the fanbase is actively choosing to believe this fake news because it suits them and their narrative. But now, let's talk about the biggest Twitter coper of them all. The guy behind all of Ankalaev's social media, the jihadi double agent, the man with a head that looks like a dildo, Ali Abdelaziz. Now, Ali has since deleted this tweet because he knows it's cringe to see like this. But the fact that he wrote out all of this cope in broken, barely readable English is just hilarious. The main takeaway from this text wall of cope is that Ankalaev was supposedly injured badly coming into this fight. To which I have to say, well, tough luck, he should have pulled out then. Like, we had Yuri and Khalil on the undercard for a reason. If Ankalaev was injured, they could have made an interim title fight like that. And don't forget, there was another title fight that could have served as a lesser, but still functional main event for the card. And in Ali's original post, he had called all the fans who cheered when fighters from the Middle East, Dagestan, or Chechnya, funny how he doesn't mention Pakistan, lose a bunch of versions. And look, anybody who has been on the internet for any amount of time knows that calling the guys who are pissing you off versions is a sign that you've lost the argument and are just coping, and coping hard. And as a final little addendum for Ali's text wall of cope, well, he basically admits that he was tweeting for Ankalaev all this time. But anyways, before we move on to the delicious seething of two certain MMA YouTubers, let's take a brief detour to Instagram. Well, there's this account called Big Ank Glazer, who went to see Ankalaev get destroyed in person. And well, his post-fight cope was to be expected, as he said, "Sir, I don't care, Ankalaev is still the better fighter. Alex knew his only chance is to rush him, and you already know he's ducking the trilogy forever. Light heavyweight has officially died. Good job, guys, we now have Alberg sleeping Yuri for the vacant belt." First, I have to say that there is no way that Yuri loses to since Yuri and I met in person prior to his fight against Jamal Hill. Yuri has been undefeated, which I'm taking credit for as the Aniki MMA blessing, by the way. It keeps Yuri safe from the Nina drama curse. And second, Ankalaev hasn't earned a rematch. Ankalaev's win over Alex is worth much less than Alex's win over Ankalaev. And Ankalaev didn't have 3 title defenses like Alex did. And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, this Instagram user has been caught on record in the past justifying and supporting having intercourse with underage girls. So, well, you know what kind of person we're dealing with. But now, let's move on to the main event of this video, which is Kenny Okoye and MMA Joey's cope session. Let's start with Kenny's first.
And I don't care what I'm labeled as. I think I'm going to be labeled as I'm coping.
Well, at least you're self-aware.
There's so many things I just need to address in this fight. I don't care what you guys say. I'm going to speak the truth on this platform. First and foremost, Pereira won because Ankalaev quit. Pereira did not win because Ankalaev got knocked out. Pereira didn't win because he was better than Ankalaev. Ankalaev made that choice to quit on himself. Now,
I have to say this. This is not only dumb of Kenny to say, but it's also insulting to Ankalaev. If you have ever asked a fighter about whether they want to be thought of as a quitter, they tell you no. Most fighters would rather be flatline KO'd than be regarded as a quitter. That's why you rarely, if ever, see a fighter tap the strikes, even when they're getting mauled on the ground. And of course, it's just objectively speaking not true. Ankalaev was badly concussed, held down in half guard, and had elbows rained down on his skull by a 230-pound Brazilian with a touch of death. Ankalaev went out on his shield. Calling him a quitter is an insult.
Saying that Ankalaev winning saves the division, because it does. Pereira has made it evident that if he doesn't fight, if he doesn't win or lose, he said he's going to take a long time off because he has to do stuff. He has to heal stuff. He's older. He's not going to be nearly as active. So we're probably not going to see a championship fight light heavyweight in a year if it's up to Alex Pereira. So we have an inactive champion now. So kudos. That's great. I know people are going to be celebrating that. I saw people saying he deserves a break though. Sure, deserve the break.
This is plain ridiculous. First, we don't know if Pereira is going to be inactive or not. And if we're judging off of Pereira's past schedule, he's going to be relatively active at the very least. And second, if you're going to complain about Pereira being an inactive champion, then why were you happy when Khamzat Chimaev won the belt? Khamzat has been notorious in the past for his lack of activity as a contender. And while Khamzat has said that he wanted to defend the belt as soon as possible after winning it in Abu Dhabi, that isn't happening. So it looks like we will be seeing him next year at the very earliest. So Khamzat has already gone back on his word regarding his activity.
Puncher's chance exists. I did not think, I even said before the fight, I don't think Alex Pereira has one punch power. My opinion didn't change. He still doesn't have one punch power. He never one punched anyone with a punch. You know, didn't one punch Jamal, followed up, didn't one punch, he follows up. And yeah, he didn't one punch Ankalaev.
Pereira doesn't have one punch power? Well, need I remind you? And remember, that was with the 10-ounce boxing gloves. But anyways, let's move on to MMA Joey. Now with Joey, I can't be bothered to go through his reaction video, but I'll just read out some tweets. So you can tell that MMA Joey is just rage baiting here, because these two tweets, which were published in quick succession, contradict each other.
All jokes aside, it was nice to see Alex Pereira get a win against a guy who wasn't rushed back from a catastrophic injury on short notice. The win over Ankalaev is the best win on his entire resume. It's insane what you can do in the sport if you're highly skilled and privileged.
And then, he said,
Alex Pereira got a solid win last night, but it just sucks the fact that Ankalaev was injured and sick heading into UFC 320. I guess we will never figure out who's the better fighter since neither time have both guys showed up at 100%.
So, Joey, which is it? Was Ankalaev injured, or was he not injured? I don't know. It just seems to be cope all around. Or maybe it's not cope, maybe it's just rage bait. Here's another gem of a tweet.
Alex Pereira is the ultimate beta male. Imagine crying because somebody said they're going to beat you up and send you back to your old job. I think he's been hanging out with Sean Strickland a little bit too much. The saw is wearing off onto him.
And yeah, look, all of this is just cope and rage bait. MMA Joey's entire shtick consists of glazing Muslim fighters and calling anybody who disagrees with him an Islamophobe. Calling Alex Pereira a beta male while being a morbidly obese man is just so ridiculous. I don't know where to start. However, what I'll say is this. With Joey, it's quite clear that he's just trying to rage bait people with his takes. And while that works for getting clicks, it doesn't help with building a sustainable, long-term audience. As you can see, Joey has been averaging fewer than 10,000 views on his videos despite having over 44,000 subscribers. In contrast, even my worst performing videos get at least 10,000, and my sub count is fewer than half of what his is. Rage baiting people to get clicks just doesn't work in the long run, and that's why his channel is stagnating. But anyways, I want to end my video on this note. I don't hate Ankalaev. Sure, his fight style is a little boring, but the guy has a couple cool KOs and is quirky in his own way, like owning his own coffee shop and smiling when a Japanese fan drew some ugly cute fan art of him. But, my goodness, everybody around Ankalaev sucks. His fans? Terrible. The MMA YouTubers who support him, rage baiters and contrarians. His manager, a terrorist. He's even a member of Akhmat Fight Club, which, as I covered in my second video on MMA gyms, is owned and operated by Ramzan Kadyrov, who not only is a corrupt dictator living off of welfare money from the Russian government, but is also considered a traitor by many Chechens since his father sold them out to Putin. And all of this is without mentioning the favorable treatment that Muslim fighters get while fighting in the Middle East, which I covered in a video I made a while back. And while I got a lot of hate for that video, it's continued to age well, as we most recently saw with how Paul Hughes got absolutely screwed by the officiating when he fought Usman Nurmagomedov in Dubai. And don't forget, Ankalaev himself was saved from a DQ loss against Johnny Walker because their first fight happened in Dubai. If Ankalaev had been DQ'd for his illegal knee to Johnny Walker, he probably never would have become champion in the first place. And look, in the end, MMA is just another sport. But a certain segment of fans, who all support Ankalaev and the Dagestanis and the Chechens because they have the same religion as them, are taking things way too far. And look, I'm obliged to say that not all fans of the Caucasus Muslim fighters are like this. There's plenty of good ones. But it's enough of them, or enough of you if you're still listening to this video at this point, and haven't clicked off in rage, it's enough to the point where it's incredibly irritating. Okay? And doubly so if you produce any form of content in this sphere. And really, it's because no other religious group acts like this. I don't see tons and tons of Christians coming out of the woodwork to celebrate Ilya Taporia or Marab or Volkanovski or Charles Oliveira or whatever. And I'm yet to see a single Buddhist celebrating Tatsuro Taira winning, okay? This issue exists with one fan base, and it really gets on everybody's nerves. So when one of your guys loses, people are gonna celebrate. Look, I coped and seethed a ton when Kai Asakura lost to Tim Elliott. But did I ask for the result to be overturned? Did I wish death upon Tim Elliott and his children? No, because that's insane. These fans just can't admit that their fighters aren't special. They are humans just like anybody else. And admittedly, I feel bad for Ankalaev because he's probably never going to get a title shot again. Hunter Campbell and the UFC just won't allow it. But I also can't help but feel happy at how miserable all of those around him are. Anyways, make sure to like, hype, and comment. Especially if you're going to be sending me death threats, because then you're just proving my point. Goodbye.